I'm Kidman Williams, the host of the Great American Circus and staff writer for GonzoToday.com. Make sure to go to GonzoToday.com and read The Facade of Freedom in support of Abby Martin by Donnie Casto. There's also Hunter, Henson, and the Great Gonzo. Yes, Henson, Gonzo, you got me, by Ashley Beth. Be sure to check out a short story by the Ralph Steadman titled Toadstool Island. And of course, there's Kevin Smith Destroys Man's Marriage Proposal by me, Kidman J. Williams. Gonzo Today also has podcasts now, in case you didn't know, like the Great American Circus. Yes, I know, shameful plug. You're Standing on My Neck with Ashley Beth, and of course, Hey Rubelman with Eric Rubelman. If you are an art collector, be sure to go to House of Days to thumb through some great and twisted original artwork for your living room, family room, or hell, even your bathroom. GonzoToday.com, where the weird have truly turned pro. Welcome again to the circus, all you gonzos and circus freaks. I'm Kidman J. Williams, and I am here with, of course, Chrissy Labasco.
You're not your son. Don't call me that. Your son's the only one who gets to say that, and that's the only one. And even him, I usually don't answer him if he says that. So,
would you kick him in the nuts?
I'm not that mean. I mean, I'm not you. Jeez.
All right, well, we have a great show today. We have Dan Linn, who is the executive director of Illinois NORML. We also have Will Jones III, who is from TIEDC, which stands for Two is Enough, Washington, D.C. They're a Washington, D.C. organization that is against having another legalized drug. And we also have Doctor of Pharmacy, Ashley Elizabeth Pincins. Yeah. That's
a pretty good lineup.
It is a good lineup. It's going to be. I think it's going to be a very interesting show today. We're going to be obviously talking about marijuana, Mary Jane, weed, reefer, spliffs, bongs,
ganja,
loud. Loud. Dabs. What about dabs? Can't forget the dabs. And what's that other shit? The syrup or whatever?
I don't know. You're asking the wrong person for that sort of thing.
We are. I know I am. Because, Chris, I know. You don't smoke the reefer. You don't do it.
And it's not because I'm against it or anything. I just choose not to.
Which is an interesting way to go about that idea, because you yourself do not smoke it.
Right.
But you're not against marijuana legalization.
No, I'm not at all. Not at all. I mean, I think it should be, probably. I mean, I don't see any reason why it shouldn't. It's definitely better than cigarettes, that's for sure.
This is true. Cigarettes are kind of a damning thing, aren't they?
Yeah, a little bit.
It's definitely not the same kind of addiction. We all know that. If people are, and I have known a couple people who have claimed to be addicted to marijuana. I have. I've known people, but it's a mental thing. It's a really, they just want to get high thing. Versus cigarettes, which are a complete mental and a physical as well.
And, I mean, when you think about somebody with an addictive personality, it's not a surprise that they could become addicted to something like marijuana.
Yeah.
I mean, those are usually those people who are the ones who are, quote, air quotes, addicted.
You had to use the air quotes, huh?
Yeah, I did.
Yes, smack you.
Not ashamed.
Well, anyway. But, yeah, no, I think it's going to be an interesting... it'll definitely be an interesting talk. Hopefully,
civil.
It doesn't become... yeah, hopefully it's civil. It does not become the circus that episode 1 became.
That was a circus. I mean, there's no doubt about that. We had some good people on, though.
We did.
That's for sure.
We did.
I thought that Nocturnus handled herself pretty well, considering how when you call yourself militant, she could have handled it way worse than what she did.
She could have. She definitely could have handled it way worse. But yeah, and it's funny we did bring up episode 1 because we do have a special treat for everybody, which I'm not even sure I told you about, Chris.
No, you didn't.
No, I got an email from trustee Chad Baker.
Oh, really?
I did, and he recorded. I was waiting. I actually when we got back from Louisville, Kentucky, from the Gonzo Fest recordings. Yeah. Well, anyway, Chad Baker sent me an email sometime in there, and I've been holding on to this because we've been posting up the Gonzo Fest adventure and, of course, The Smell of Gonzo, episode 2.5. I figured I'd wait until this episode to bring this thing on. It's a hell of a thing. He addresses Nocturnus. It's like this little thing in the... he recorded this audio bit, and he's talking. It's almost like a... what do they call those, public service announcement type of thing. He's talking about the dangers of prostitution and all that, and brings up Nocturnus in a very bad light. Very bad. Anyway.
Wow.
I'll let you guys hear this. So, here it is.
Hi, my name is Chad Baker, Mayor's Trustee, and I'm here to talk about the issue of legalization of prostitution in the United States of America. Recently, I was on an internet radio talk show called The Great American Circus, and I spoke to a young female advocate of prostitution that goes by the name Nocturnus. Nocturnus. I highly doubt that is her real name, which makes total sense, because as a former prostitute, she's not a real person either. So the next time you think about signing a petition to legalize prostitution, ask yourself, are you listening to a real person? Pimps, drug dealers, strippers, and prostitutes are not real people, and their opinion doesn't matter. Listen to people like me instead, Chad Baker, Mayor's Trustee. And I say prostitution is wrong and should stay illegal. God bless America. My name is Chad Baker, and I approve this message.
So, yeah, he definitely, I know you're a little bit in shock right now. I know. He definitely called her and straight said, "You're not a human being." He's harsh. He's a harsh prick.
Is he trying to get himself killed?
Maybe he wants to be that JFK martyr, except not a Democrat, obviously.
Wow. Yeah. I'm at a loss for words. I really am. Wow.
Well, anyway, so back to now that we're off that, we'll get back to the marijuana. Like myself, I know you don't smoke. I smoked a lot. I haven't smoked in a while, actually. It's been a while for me.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, I'm indifferent towards it. It's just I'm not a person that needs it.
Which is a good thing.
Right. If it's there and I feel like it, okay, why not? I'll throw some shit down my lungs.
You'll indulge.
I'll indulge to it. But, I have plenty of crazy-ass stories. I remember one time, I was probably, about 17, right? And I made this homemade aqua pipe from a test tube and a stopper and some hoses that I took from the science lab. Anyway, and there was this little, bowl piece on the top.
He went to a Naperville school. They won't miss any of it. For those of you in shock and awe that he would dare take something from his science lab at school. Went to a Bonzi. I mean, come on. They got too much money as it is anyway.
Little rich bitches. So anyway.
Yeah, that's right. I know you weren't, but
no, I wasn't.
You went to a rich bitch school. So
I was. I was like, Dylan McKay from 90210. Well, no, because he was a trust fund baby. That's right. There were no fucking kids that were hurting in Beverly Hills.
I was going to say, that's the 90210. It's a little bit different. They don't have Aurora right next to them.
No, so I would have been the little Jewish girl. Remember the little Jewish girl? She lived in an apartment.
I didn't really watch 90210, so I don't really remember.
Well, fuck you. Dylan was the man. I don't give a shit what anybody says. Fuck you. I ain't ashamed. I probably should be. But anyway, so...
If you were a female and you were admitting to liking 90210, I'd be more okay with it. But you're a dude, so... Yeah, I would be ashamed.
Everybody watched 90210. Everybody.
I didn't.
Well, aren't you just the manly man?
Oh, I never said I was a manly man, but,
you shouldn't.
I have the alphabet of manliness that I've bought and read and own.
Yeah.
So.
I read it, too.
Great book.
It is.
Great book. Maddox
for Maddox.
Yes, he's a... You know what? I think he made another one. I know he has more than one book now, but I never managed to look at any of his other ones.
No, neither did I, actually. I haven't heard the other ones, but... Anyway, so back to the story. So I've got to paint the picture because this is a podcast. So I'm in my car. I had an 87 Monte Carlo with T-tops, the whole bit. And we got this aqua pipe, me and a buddy, John. And I'm sitting there and I'm hitting this thing, right? I'm roasting it. All of a sudden, I hear this like weird sound, this like sound. And then this awful, awful smell starts filling the whole car. And then I realized that, at that point I realized that maybe that bowl that I made, the rim of it was a little too high. Because what had happened is it caught my hair on fire. And it shot the whole side of my hair up. Yeah. Yeah. It was all flaking and messed up for the day. It was pretty bad. And back then with the mohawk, I had a lot of stuff in my hair, too. I'm lucky I didn't lose all my hair.
Yeah, you're lucky you have hair now.
Right.
You have any hair.
I've been like Michael Jackson.
Fake hair?
All the fake hair, the wigs.
Yeah.
But you said you had a story, too.
Well, yeah.
With your...
Yeah, me personally, I've never done any. Obviously, I haven't done anything. I've never even tried, for that matter.
You smelled.
Oh, yeah, I hate the smell of it, by the way. Just wanted to point that out there. I mean, I know some people absolutely love that smell, which I don't know how, because it's so gross to me. It's just, I can't stand it. But my story, I was sitting down one day. I don't remember how old I was. It's probably like 16 years old, maybe 17. I don't know. So I was somewhere in high school. And my mom pulls out her yearbook. I don't even know why she had it out, but we're thumbing through it, and there's this picture of her, and I think it was for more like a group or a club at her high school. Don't know what it was exactly, but she points to the picture, and she says, "See me right there?" She's like, "Yep, I was high in that picture." I was like, "Oh, thanks, Mom." That was really a big detail I was wondering from the picture that's in black and white.
How many pictures was she high in?
You know what? I don't know. She just pointed to that one, and at that point, after the one, I was like, I'm done. I was like, okay.
You're like, okay, thanks, Mom. Was it as bad as a sex story?
No, that would have been way worse. and I have to
Son,
erase.
do you see those bleachers over there in that picture?
Those would be things that would make you have to erase your memory. And thank God I don't have anything like that.
Thank God. Have you ever walked in on your parents?
No.
Oh, don't ever do it.
I don't ever plan to, so.
Ugh. On that note, let's get to the National Affairs Desk with Doc Jafarius. And before we go, let you know, we're going right into this interview right after we go through the National Affairs. All right? Does that sound good to you, Chris?
Oh, it sounds great to me.
You sure?
Oh, I'm positive.
All right, here's Doc Jafarius with the National Affairs Desk.
Hello, Great American Circus Podcast, reporting for Gonzo Today's Memos from the National Affairs Desk. I'm Dr. Jafarius Higgison. A key witness to the August shooting of Michael Brown by Ferguson, Missouri police has sued the city, the police department, and the former officer who fired the fatal shot, Darren Wilson. Dorian Johnson claims Wilson assaulted him, violating his constitutional rights and intentionally and negligently inflicted emotional pain during the encounter. The suit claims Wilson fired his weapon at both men, striking Brown several times. The lawsuit states at no time did Officer Wilson order plaintiff Johnson or Brown to stop or freeze. Wilson left the police department following the announcement. Bill Cosby called out a couple of hecklers Saturday while he performed at the Cobb Energy Performing Arts Center in Atlanta. Before the show, Cosby reportedly addressed potential disturbances. He stated, "If there are disruptions, stay calm. Do not confront the person making the disruption." Just last week, 2 more women, including a former Cosby Show guest star, came forward. Since the allegations, Cosby's career has taken a serious hit. His upcoming NBC show was shut down. The Cosby Show reruns have been removed from TV Land, and Netflix has postponed his special. This has been a brief look at the news today. Reporting for Gonzo Today's Memos from the National Affairs Desk, I'm Dr. Jafarius Higgison. Be safe out there.
All right, circus freaks and gonzos. We have Dan Linn and Doctor of Pharmacy, Ashley E. Pincins, here on the Great American Circus. We're going to be talking about marijuana prohibition and medical marijuana and all that fun stuff that comes with it. Dan, how would you like to tell our audience who you are exactly and what you do?
Well, I'm the executive director of the Illinois chapter of NORML, which is the National Organization for Reforming Marijuana Laws. I'm a lobbyist down in Springfield at the Capitol, statewide organizer, and essentially we've been working to end cannabis prohibition, national NORML since the 70s, the Illinois chapter since the latest reincarnation of it since the early 2000s. I believe I've been the executive director since 2006.
2006. Okay. What kind of things have you guys achieved since you're coming on as director?
Well, we were able to pass a statewide medical cannabis program. We decriminalized cannabis in the city of Chicago. We just, about 20 minutes ago, got a statewide decriminalization bill through a Senate committee, which it's already passed the House. So if it could get through the full Senate and get signed by the governor, it would decriminalize cannabis statewide.
Excellent.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations for sure. In order. That's amazing. I did not even know that.
20 minutes ago.
Yeah, 20 minutes ago. Well, I'm sure somebody's up on that story by now, right? High Times, one of the two, right? Yeah, maybe. Well,
yeah, you might see an AP story come out in the next 2 hours, I'd say.
Right. People are pretty quick. We won't be. This will be up tomorrow. So, excellent though. That's good to hear. Now, as far as medical marijuana, you and I met actually in 2010, I believe, 2011, I believe it was, when I interviewed you, Dan. And we were at the medical marijuana march in Chicago, downtown Chicago there, by the Picasso.
Okay.
Yeah. And, you had some things to say, and we didn't get a whole lot of talking in about it, because both of you and I were pretty busy, and we were moving around. And, but I did want to ask, especially in light now that we've seen medical marijuana passing, what do you think of the harsh laws on medical marijuana in Illinois? Like some of the harsh stipulations to it?
It was all put in there as part of the political compromises necessary to pass the legislation. It did take us over a decade to get medical cannabis approved in Illinois. And over the course of those years, the legislation had to be made more restrictive, certain safeguards put into it, the pilot program aspect, just about everything that people can point to and say that this was a restrictive program. Just about all of them are in the law itself, and were put in there as part of the negotiating process to get this legislation through.
So evidently you don't agree with the harsh stipulations.
Oh, no, I agree that they're harsh. I think that it is a burdensome program that we're putting these patients through. But compared to no program, I think that it's the best that we could offer them at this point. And, after years of bringing patients to come down to Springfield to testify and not getting the legislation through, you have to go back to the drawing board and figure out a way to get it through.
Excellent. And Ashley. Ashley?
Yes.
Okay. I was like, did we lose another one, really? All right. You are a doctor of pharmacy. That's correct, right?
Correct.
Okay. And you yourself have obviously taken courses in medical marijuana and the effect.
But I did do some research on my own because I was interested. I did a research project with a principal investigator and wrote an article that has yet to be published, just basically detailing marijuana's drug development and how it's essentially a drug that is developed backwards, where you already have a population on it, but no regulations or safety and efficacy data supporting it.
Okay. Well, now, there was something, and we're going to talk about him since I think he flaked on us, or he just was scared to come on. We're going to talk about a little something that Will Jones has said, because a lot of what Will Jones had said, he talks about things that I hear all the time in the news about, and from people who are against marijuana. Now, he did say he's talking about the effects of marijuana and how it can, what did he say? He said, quote, this is a quote from him. He says, marijuana is not harmless. Though not as addictive as drugs like heroin, today's high-potency marijuana is harmful. Marijuana contributes to psychosis and schizophrenia, addiction for 1 in 6 kids who ever use it once, and it significantly increases the risk of IQ loss among those who started smoking before age 18. Would you agree with that?
I would agree that those statistics are published and that he believes he's acting in truth when he's referencing them. However, the source of those statistics and the lack of analysis of those statistics is not, or his analysis of the statistics in this case is not what I disagree with.
Can you explain a little further?
Sure, yeah, I know. I just realized that was pretty vague. So, I mean, I've seen every single statistic that he's presented, and like I said, those are based on actual statistics. He's not making those up. He's not, fabricating those. However, those are based on numbers from studies that were taken a very long time ago, a very limited population, basically studies that if you were trying to get a drug legalized or illegalized would never hold up in an FDA or Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act review of a medication. And, I mean, essentially determining the harmful effects of marijuana, if any, isn't really the alpha and omega of the argument that I see NORML presenting, and also that I see the medical marijuana patients actually fighting every day. Whether or not anything can be harmful. Strawberries can be harmful if you eat a ton of them every single day. And the whole thing just, it reminds me of the story of Sleeping Beauty where, she's got to prick her finger on the spindle, so they just ban spindles from the kingdom. And what does she do? She's never seen a spindle, so she pricks her finger anyway. It's just a classic harm reduction argument. And unfortunately, the illegalization of marijuana prohibits us from getting any bona fide data moving forward, and just prohibits us from studying it. So we're not even able to confirm or deny the harmful effects or any medical effects.
Okay. Now, what about schizophrenia? Because I know, it's my show, and I'll be honest, I've smoked for a very long time, and I have no effects of schizophrenia. I have no kind of anything, nor do I have addiction problems with it. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious how he believes that marijuana causes schizophrenia. Mm-hmm.
The claims regarding schizophrenia are based on, actual studies of folks with schizophrenia and kind of a retrospective analysis of their life and the choices that they made and some of the chemicals they were exposed to up until their diagnosis of schizophrenia, which has to occur as an adult. So even if you're a schizophrenic patient who's had an onset much earlier than the age of 18, you have to suffer with this disease unnamed until you're 18. They can't diagnose you until you're 18. One of the factors that came up in a lot of these people's lives, retrospectively as they were looking, was that they had engaged in recreational marijuana use. When you have data like that, it's important to consider, because this is, again, what any FDA employee would do when considering the safety of a drug, is to look at the big picture of where this population is in their lives. So if you're a teenager and you're undergoing the journey of adolescence into adulthood, and on top of all the obvious stresses and trials and tribulations and rites of passage in that part of your life, you also have this problem that no one can really tell you what it is, where you're hearing voices in your head that aren't realistically around you.
Well,
and
that
they're
would
telling
be
you
schizophrenia.
That would be schizophrenia. So it's not really too hard to imagine that a drug such as marijuana that has calming and tranquilizing effects would be attractive to a population as that. So really what that data came from was studying these folks and seeing that marijuana had been used. There really has been no causative link.
Right. So essentially, the marijuana can bring on schizophrenia to those who are it's already wrapped in their DNA.
Correct. It has to be. Yeah, and I did leave that point out, Kidman. I apologize. It has to be already in someone's DNA.
Well, you were alluding to you alluded to it, but I wasn't sure if that was the clear point you were making.
I apologize. Yes. So marijuana use will not insert a schizophrenia gene into somebody's DNA. The gene already has to be there. Schizophrenia is a hereditary syndrome, and it may be true that marijuana does stimulate or turn on, as we say, those genes.
Okay.
And affect an earlier onset. However, we really don't know, again, because we're really unable to study those effects, especially in that population with its legalized status.
Excellent. Now, Dan, I'm sure through your years now with NORML and fighting policy and lobbying and whatnot, that I'm sure you've come across men like Will Jones. Am I correct by saying that?
Yeah. I mean, we get all sorts of folks that oppose the re-legalization of cannabis, whether it's people from the drug treatment background, from the law enforcement background, people that are opposed to all sorts of things that are addiction related. We definitely encountered lots of folks who unfortunately are opposed to what it is that we're trying to do.
Now, do you think the opposers have ever smoked it themselves?
Maybe. I mean, I'm sure that some of them have. I would say it's a relatively small percentage, though, maybe 15 or 20% of those who are actively opposing our efforts have any type of personal familiarity with the substance.
And if you're going to oppose something, I mean, I could be off, but I mean, if you're, at least in my life, if I'm against something, I had to have at least done it once to know that I'm against it. Right?
At least when it comes to kind of substances that one would consume by their own choice. I mean, there's other activities that you don't need to partake in to realize that they're
I wouldn't go.
Activities. Yeah.
Well, right. No, I'm not going to sit there and get into auto asphyxiation, just because I want to know if it's good or not. That's a little silly. There's things that, should be common sense not to do, obviously. But I mean, when we're talking about marijuana, which is a virtually harmless drug, and I mean, something of that nature, and people coming out with these wild claims on it. I've heard a lot of wild claims, and I'm sure you have too, Dan. I'm sure there's been tons of wild claims that you've heard being, in Springfield alone, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean, there's no shortage of absurdity here.
Right. I mean, have you ever just stood in the room and somebody spouts something? Like, what's the weirdest thing that you ever heard?
you don't hear it as much anymore, but at least when I was growing up, you'd hear that the use of cannabis would make men grow breasts, or it would make women grow beards, that kind of merging of the sexes as a result of consuming this plant-based material.
And did you ever just look them straight in the eye and go, have you ever smoked it? Like, have you ever been that blunt?
Usually the people that are spouting those type of claims, it's real clear that they have no familiarity with the substance. And even some of the more outlandish claims, I find it's best even to not even kind of give them any value, even with the response. I think some of them just, they do a good enough job in their own absurdity of showing people that this is foolishness to even entertain some of these ideas.
Right.
You're a very wise man, Dan.
Well, thank you.
Now, I want to jump on Will here again, because he made some claims. He makes a lot of claims towards marijuana. Now, one of them that he says is that he talks about the truths and the fabrications. Now, this was a fabrication. It said, if we legalize marijuana, we will help reduce the rates of incarceration. His truth to that is, and I quote Will Jones, do we really think legalizing marijuana will stop racial injustice? A true solution to racial injustice will not give a free pass to those who have been acting unjustly, nor will it jeopardize the health of youth across the nation, particularly those in minority communities. Instead, it will bring to justice those who have been practicing racist policies and protect minority youth from a commercial industry that will prey on them. Would either one of you agree with that idea?
No, the opening I would agree with. There's not a lot of people in prison for first-time, non-violent cannabis possession offenses, but there are people in prisons and jails for cannabis possession, and then there's definitely people in there who are there as a result of violating a parole or probation for testing positive for cannabis from a drug test. That's something I think that is worth clarifying, but otherwise, there's just a lot of broader issues there that you mentioned, and I'm not sure that we have a one-stop solution for fixing racial injustice, but we definitely can make some strides in improving the situation by removing this product from the illegal market and then prosecuting those that are involved with it.
Right, and is it really that much? Is marijuana honestly that much of a racial issue? Because I know plenty of Caucasians that smoke it. I know Hollywood, radio, TV, even myself, marijuana is a wildly accepted substance. Even when we were at that medical marijuana march, granted, the Chicago police officer I was talking to wouldn't go on record, but he sure as hell told me off the record that it should be a legal drug.
And I think when it comes to the racial injustice, and this is something that we knew was going to happen with the Chicago decriminalization ordinance, where if you allow the officers to have discretion to either write the ticket for the cannabis possession or charge somebody under state law and arrest them, that we would see a lot of white kids getting the tickets, and we'd see a lot of African American and Latino kids getting arrested, and that's exactly what happened. And I think that it's that racial disparity in who's getting the tickets versus who's getting arrested that Mr. Jones might be referencing, and it's definitely something that's on our radar and that we're actively trying to fix, specifically with that statewide decriminalization bill that was just advanced out of the Senate committee earlier today.
And that's amazing. And I think that's part of the reason he's not on our show right now, is that I don't think he was very well prepared for what we were going to be talking about. And, he's talking about racial injustices, and that's exactly what you guys are fighting against, on your end of things, which is amazing. I know people talk about and he talked about schools and that we need schools and healthcare, not more drugs. But the fact is, I know in Colorado, $17 million went into special school taxes levied heavily on the marijuana industry. Do you work with Colorado at all, NORML?
No, we don't really work with other state chapters. We work a little bit with the national organization, but we're definitely paying close attention to the revenue numbers, the incidences of driving fatalities that can be attributed to only cannabis, and some of the other issues that we're often faced with when we're making our efforts to try and legalize cannabis in Illinois, looking at what has happened now in Colorado.
And what kind of headway have you guys made on, say, federally legalizing?
There's definitely momentum to change the access to banking services for state legal and licensed medical or recreational cannabis facilities. There's a specific tax code that's probably going to get revised that prevents those same businesses from being able to deduct standard deductions from their tax forms. I think that we'll see some movement on that federally within the next couple of years. I think you'll see the federal government get out of the way of states that are looking to move forward with either medical or recreational programs in the next 5 years. I think by the end of the 2016 election, we could see potentially 4 or 5 more states move forward with recreational ballot initiatives.
Okay, and now do you think that a lot of the other states are really looking hard at Colorado and seeing what kind of good legalizing marijuana is doing for them?
Yeah, I think everybody's keeping a close eye on the tax revenues that are coming in. I think that as the market matures a little bit in Colorado, you'll see some of these finer details worked out, specifically in terms of the regulations on edibles, public consumption, employer and employees' rights. I think all of those details, we're still kind of waiting to see what can be done with them from the Colorado example.
I mean, how long is that? They've been legal now for what? 2 years, almost?
Yeah, they've had state licensed sales legal since January 1st, 2014, but throughout 2013, there was the ability for people to be legally in possession, but there wasn't the retail outlets available yet.
Okay, right. Now, I know like a lot of people have, when the medical bills have come around, I know that there's been a struggle between businesses and the medical industry. When I know there's a couple guys who have gotten fired because they were prescribed medical marijuana, and they took it upon themselves to fire them because they couldn't pass the marijuana test. Is there any plan to try to rectify that with law? Like, is there anything that you guys have been doing to try to alleviate that so people aren't getting fired from their jobs when they're prescribed?
Nothing really that we're doing here in Illinois, at least. I mean, the national chapter might be doing some work. The Colorado chapter might be doing some work. It gets to be real tricky, though, because just about everywhere you're going to be employed at your own free will, and, you know, you're kind of subject to what the company's policies are, and if you don't like their policies, theoretically, you can go and find another job working for some company that does have policies that you agree with. But I do see the employer and employee rights being an ongoing legal issue that probably will take years, maybe even a decade before it's really resolved.
But do you think it should be? I mean, what's the difference if a doctor prescribes you marijuana or he prescribes you Vicodin or Percocet or, you know, whatever many other narcotics there are out there for them to give you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't think that patients or even adults who choose to consume cannabis recreationally should have the potential for losing their job for choosing to consume those substances. But I think that there is still that culture and stigma surrounding cannabis that some people look down upon. And I think that it'll take a decent amount of time before you can really erode that to the point that you see these changes in the workplace.
Right, but that's what I'm saying is that, recreationally, okay, I can see them putting up a stink about recreation. I get that, I do. But when we're talking about a doctor prescribing you, because trust me, go down to Florida, you'll find plenty of recreational Vicodin users, and whatever else they're into now. But when the doctor's prescribing you a drug, because they're all drugs, am I wrong by that? Is Ashley stating that?
No, you are not wrong. It's a chemical substance that has an effect on your physiologic system.
Right. So, what is, like I said, there is no difference in it. Why should a business be able to say, no, you're failing the marijuana, the whiz quiz on marijuana, even though it's prescribed to you? Like, how can they state that these drugs are fine, but this drug isn't?
Basically,
it has to do ultimately with the scheduling of it as a Schedule I substance. And, there's plenty of workplaces that get funding for having a verified drug-free workplace, and that's why they do a lot of the drug testing on both the front end as well as the random screening processes. So these businesses are financially tied to ensuring that nobody's using any of those illegal substances, because the federal government still does consider cannabis, whether it's recreational or medical, to be an illegal substance.
So essentially, until the federal law goes through, they can still pick and choose.
Yeah.
Correct.
That's pretty harsh. Don't you think?
Right. Not to mention there's the ethical issue that I'm sure many folks have had brought to them, where, we don't want to be employing somebody who's in clear violation of the Controlled Substance Act of 1970. And that gets into a whole ethical thing, especially if you're working with any sensitive population or vulnerable population. They're going to kind of hit you with that too, that, what's your moral character if you're violating a law, regardless of how the population as a whole feels about that law, whether or not it should be a law, you're violating it.
And what is the Act of 1970? What is that?
It's the Controlled Substance Act of 1970 that established the scheduling of the narcotics that were available at the time, and they've just, and as the designer drugs, for instance, and other newer drugs have become available for recreational use, they've just been adding to that. It's not established so much in science or pharmacologic data. It's governed by the judicial branch, our law enforcement. It doesn't actually come from any pools of data. They're basically using their data as data that they've reported from incidents on the street where they're, actually, detaining or arresting or confiscating people, or seeing the results of folks who have used it and have brought harm onto themselves. So once that law was passed, that was kind of, the whole party's over they were talking about in 1970 as a response to the counterculture of the 60s, and obviously we saw after 1970 a surge of just a growing black market, to the point where, we have more $100 bills, American $100 bills, circulating outside of our country than in our country once those drugs were prohibited. It's worth mentioning, by the way, that Controlled Substance Act actually lists cocaine as a Schedule 2. Schedule 2 is the same category as Percocet, hydrocodone, that was recently brought to Schedule 2 from Schedule 3. And Schedule 2's definition is a high risk for abuse and chemical dependence. However, there is some medical benefit. So cocaine, available, I should disclose, as an eye drop for eye procedures, cocaine hydrochloride is actually more legal in this country than marijuana. And I don't think anyone would argue that cocaine is safer than marijuana.
Well, now we got a party. Hold on. It looks like Will Jones is coming in. So...
Did you hit add to group?
No, I didn't. Hello?
Now we need this to record again. Okay. Should be good now.
Is it recording?
Yes.
Okay. Is everybody there?
Yep.
Hello?
I'm here.
Dan?
Yep, I'm on.
All right. That was my bad. We'll just say that right now. I hit the wrong button. Instead of adding Will Jones to the conversation, I accidentally put you guys on hold. Sorry about that. Willow, are you there?
Yes, I am.
All right. So you're a little late, not going to lie, not going to sugarcoat it for you. You're a little late on us.
Yeah, I hadn't heard back, so I wasn't sure if this was still going on. I just saw the calls. Sorry about that.
Oh, it's fine. We're actually talking right now about medical marijuana. Medical. Not necessarily recreational. We were talking about, refresh my memory, 1970.
The Controlled Substance Act, correct, that established the schedules, yep.
Yes. Will, since we're just getting you on, I know that you're very against legalization of marijuana. What are your thoughts on medical marijuana?
We have to, it's a complicated issue. There's nothing that is, intrinsically wrong with the marijuana plant. There's many plants in the world that we use, and we take different, properties that they have to make medicines, like opium. We use that in medicines. We use, all types of plants for medicines. The issue, though, with medical marijuana is that it's been confused where the idea of medical marijuana is basically where people self-medicate, often self-reported pain, come up with their own dosage, and basically with the popular term medical marijuana, that describes something that no other medicine has, and so it's in many ways, I think it's a misnomer, this idea of medical marijuana that's currently going around. Now, again, there are, research is being done right now, and there are some, I think, epidiolex that comes from parts of cannabis, and so again, there's nothing that there are medical properties in many different plants, and research should be done, but there's an approved process by which medicines become prescribed by doctors and used, and medical marijuana is really bypassing that. And the unfortunate reality is that it's part of the legalization strategy. And there was a revealing quote by Keith Straub of NORML at Emory University. He said, "We're trying to get marijuana reclassified medically. If we're able to do that, we'll be able to give marijuana a good name, and it will be a red herring by which we can give marijuana a good name." And unfortunately, that's what we're seeing across the nation. And the reality is places like California have more NPR had a program there saying how there's more marijuana stores than Starbucks in places like Los Angeles. There's about 800 to 1,000 medical marijuana dispensaries, and so. Again, the unfortunate reality behind the medical marijuana movement is not a true science in,
well, wait. Now, hold on. I'm going to stop you right there. Yeah. Because you're saying that it's not a true, like, that little rant you just went on, you're saying that it's not a true medicine. How is it not a true medicine? I mean, I have seen it personally. People use it and saw them getting better from things like Crohn's disease. I remember one guy. Are you familiar with Crohn's disease?
Yes, not. I mean,
okay.
I'm not
but essentially, it makes people very frail, right?
Yes.
I saw a cat. He was using medical marijuana, and not only was he not frail, but he was a very fit 200 pounds of muscle and an amateur kickboxer. And just by using medical marijuana, it helped him eat, it helped him get through the pain when he does have his bouts with Crohn's. I mean, I see things that marijuana helps. I mean, can you really deny that it helps nobody, that They just looking for a card to get high?
No, and I do not say that it doesn't help anyone. I'm saying the process, the medical marijuana movement across the nation. I'm not talking, there are certain, there's kids with epilepsy that there's, many people have stories of how it's helped treat the symptoms of that, and research is being done. I support research being done on, the medicinal properties of, a marijuana plant, just like any other plant. That we use for medicine. But again, when I'm speaking of this, I'm speaking of it in terms of broad, how it's broadly known and how it's broadly implemented, not specific cases where it may, there may be, anecdotal evidence that it has helped someone. So again, I can't address every specific situation,
right.
But the medical marijuana movement as a whole is not a medical movement at all. It's part of the legalization process that has really been quite successful in changing people's perceptions of marijuana. Again, this is not about individual cases where people may be helped by medicinal properties in the marijuana plant. But again, if you need some medicinal properties with opium, you don't go say, I'm going to get some opium and smoke it. There's a way by which you can.
Well, I'm sure some people do.
Yes. Sure, some people do, but again, that's not in the. There's a reason why we have a process by which things are approved to become medicine, and marijuana is kind of getting special treatment right now, and it's the special.
Well, that's because. Now, Dan, would you agree with this, Dan? Because
I think that there's other plant-based medicines that we don't send through the FDA process. I mean, if you go through any pharmacy's vitamin and supplement aisle, the valerian root, the St. John's wort, echinacea, those are other plant-based medicines that we don't require to go through the FDA approval process. People do find medical and therapeutic benefits from them. And specifically with cannabis, before they made it illegal, it was one of the most widely prescribed medicines that was taken out of the pharmacopoeia after they made it illegal in 1937. So you really just have a few generations of doctors who were ignorant of the medical properties of it because it was taken out of the pharmacopoeia.
And why do you think it was?
Will be better as part of the movement to make this plant illegal and the racial undertones and the fear-mongering that went with it. They wanted to smear the substance of any potential benefits that it could be offering people.
And why do you think
a lot more different techniques for administering the medicine, whether it's through tinctures, whether it's through edibles or vaporization or topicals. So I think that this tired excuse of, no other medicine is smoked, I just don't think it's valid. I think that there are other methods of ingestion and administering this medicine. I think if you look at the history of cannabis use, it's well documented that this provides a therapeutic benefit for a wide range of ailments for people all across the world.
And Ashley, would you agree with Dan on this?
Yeah, I agree with most of what I'm hearing right now. I'm glad to see the research, that's available for folks to know this stuff. This is great.
Now, Will, you did. I ain't gonna lie. You missed a lot of this already, but we were talking about. We went over the fact that people are losing their jobs, being prescribed medical marijuana, and things of that nature. I know a lot of what TIEDC's talking about has more to do with the recreational end of marijuana, but you don't seem totally opposed to the idea of the medical marijuana, then.
No, I'm not opposed to the idea of medicinal properties of the marijuana plant being used in medicine. Once again, just like there's many other plants that we obtain, whatever medicinal properties are. But for example, with marijuana, there's many much research that's being done, even some that's being done in Israel, where you don't need the THC component, which again, I'm talking about the medical marijuana movement as it's known, and used in most cases across the United States. Looking at statistics to see who's the average medical marijuana user. I'm not, again, specifically speaking about this individual here or there, but from a statistical standpoint, the medical marijuana movement is not one that's really of health origin or has health as its goal.
Okay, well, what is it exactly? What exactly is it that you don't? How do I put this? What is it exactly that you feel the reason why marijuana should not be legal? As far as, and I'm going to just dive right into the recreational use. Yeah. Why don't you think that should be? TIEDC stands for Two is Enough, and really that's a summary of the idea of we already have two recreational legal drugs, alcohol and tobacco. When we look at the impact that they've had on society, we have more than that, but go on.
Recreational, legal, addictive drugs of this nature. It's in a certain category. And so when
but there are more than two already. Will. There's already more than two drugs. What's that?
Yeah, I said, but I was specifically saying recreational drugs, and we could squabble about how we define the term drug. So I'll leave that to the side if we want to squabble about that. But the point is, when we look at again these addictive drugs, alcohol, tobacco, we've seen what they've done to communities, especially where our big concern is an African American. I've seen more liquor stores on the corners of our communities, more tobacco advertising targeting us. And
but doesn't that have to do with your board of trustees and your district boards? They're the ones letting the alcohol and the liquor stores in to those neighborhoods.
The issue here is that when an industry is started, people talk, well, why don't we regulate marijuana like we regulate alcohol? I say I'm not encouraged by a regulation of alcohol where the CDC reports that 68% of 12th graders use alcohol, and the American Lung Association reports that 70% of smokers started at age 18 and younger. The unfortunate reality with these addictive recreational drug industries is that they target young users because those are going to be the lifelong customers. Statistically, there's very few people that become addicted to alcohol or tobacco or marijuana starting after the age of 21 or 25, depending on which drug we're talking about. Statistically, once again, this is all about young people. Those are lifelong customers. And tobacco and alcohol companies currently derive about 8% of their revenue from less than 20% of their users, and that's the addicts and the heavy users. And we can't afford to see the same thing with marijuana. And this is not about saying that anyone should go to jail because they smoked a joint. I don't think that should be the case, and I think the conversation has been dominated across the nation with this false dichotomy that it's either lock people up or legalize. And we're really stressing that there is an alternate route where, again, we're not saying, lock people up, but on the other hand, we're not saying legalize. And I think that what D.C. did in theory is something that could be explored further. I definitely was opposed to it because the momentum of the whole thing was towards full legalization, and D.C. Council already tried twice to introduce legislation that would allow for the stores and commercialization of marijuana. But the idea that someone can grow, 6 plants in their home and transfer it without payment to someone else, that's not a bad idea. The idea of that, again, what I am against is the industry commercialization and, unfortunately, medical marijuana, decriminalization, Initiative 71 in D.C. These are all about the end game, which is the marijuana industry, which, it's being reported if it's legalized across the nation could bring in more than the NFL.
Of course it's about the industry. Of course it's about the industry. Everything's about the industry. I don't care if you're picking up a Coca-Cola. It's about the industry. Coca-Cola ain't good for you. Coffee ain't really good for you. Marijuana, whatever. It's not bad. I've never found it to be all that terrible myself, but it's all going to be industry. That's what I'm trying to get at, is that I don't care if we're talking about marijuana or, the latest Blu-ray. It's about commercialization. That's what this whole country's based on, isn't it?
It is, and we're just posing to people this question. We're not talking about there should be a dictatorship where we do live in a democratic society, but we do want the other side presented in that field. You want to see next Super Bowl, a marijuana commercial instead of Budweiser commercial. Do you want to see, in the African American communities, do you want to see marijuana stores on the corner right next to the liquor stores? We're talking about the reality of what's going to happen, and we do have an option. We do have a choice where we can say we're not, and this is what we're encouraging people to do. Do not let it an addictive drug. If you're under 21, a youth, marijuana is 1 in 6 chance that you'll be addicted. If you're an adult, it's 1 in 12. So it's, once again, but most people start when they're younger, and so we're just posing these questions to people. We're not saying that there is some type of moral that marijuana is some evil, wicked plant. But we're saying, do we want to see the reality of, depending how you define it, this third recreational addictive drug in our nation, seeing the cost that we've already paid after tobacco and alcohol?
Well, I mean, you talk about the cost. Dan, do you want to field that?
Yeah, I think if we're going to talk about comparing alcohol, tobacco, and cannabis, I think cannabis is by far and large the safest substance out of them. You don't see the same type of long-term detrimental effects with cannabis like you do with those other two substances. You don't see the same type of negative impacts on the non-consuming public like you do with alcohol or drunk driving. You don't see it with the secondhand smoke like you do with cigarettes. And I do think that there are ways that you could regulate the industry or prevent or limit the advertising to really avoid getting young people interested or intrigued about this substance. I mean, there have been tremendous strides over the past decade in reducing underage tobacco and cigarette consumption, and I think that those methods are working because of a realistic-based approach to educating young people on the ills of tobacco consumption. I think with alcohol and tobacco, you also have a lot deeper roots in the history of this country. One of the colonies was founded as a tobacco plantation. If you look at the end of alcohol prohibition and how the bootleggers and rum runners were able to really clamp down on any competition in this new market that was emerging after the repeal of alcohol prohibition, obviously they wanted to keep as much money coming into their pockets as possible. We can see that in the example of not allowing people to home brew until the Carter administration, despite prohibition being repealed in 1933. I mean, that's 40 years of people not being able to legally make their own home beer or wine. That only helps the industry there, and I think that that's where, with cannabis prohibition slowly ending now, the more that you can start allowing those individual consumers to be able to provide the product to themselves and or maybe for free to their friends, you'll be able to avoid those type of fears of big industry coming and preying on the youth or the disadvantaged in this country and keeping them under that rock.
I would personally agree with that, honestly. I would.
And it sounds great. It sounds great in theory, but again, in practical terms, I mean, already what was looked at in California with just medical marijuana, we're not even talking about recreational, where you're supposed to have some type of, illness. In California, you can look at Colorado and see what's happened there. It's interesting to note that Colorado now has bipartisan condemnation of the marijuana industry. Democratic Governor Hickenlooper said it was reckless. The Republican Attorney General said she was glad to see it's being sued about this. And according to Suffolk University Today poll, USA Today poll that came out towards the end of last year, the majority of Coloradans no longer support legalization. If we look at other...
I think Governor Hickenlooper has walked back some of those statements. I think if you talk to the parents of those schools in Colorado that are now being fully funded, they're okay with it. And if you talk to the voters in Colorado, the polling data shows that they're still okay with the vote that they did with Amendment 64. This is a country that is okay with allowing adults to make adult decisions.
I'm just citing the polls that came out at the end of last year about what Coloradan voters said. So, I'm not going to look at statistics, but, we can also go out.
But you also said that came from a Republican, Will.
I said, not the poll. I said there's bipartisan condemnation of the legalization industry in Colorado. Democratic governor, Republican attorney general, both have condemned it in public statements.
Well, of course they did.
As of late, the polling that's not an of course. Where you see bipartisan unity on the issue, that's not an of course. And you can look at other countries as well, not just the United States, because again, we have to realize it's not just the United States that has laws against marijuana use. But I think an interesting case is, you could say, Great Britain, where they changed their laws concerning marijuana. It wasn't fully commercialized, but they changed their laws, and there was a newspaper there, the UK, the independent newspaper in the UK, and they led a rally of over 16,000 people in London Hyde Park against the laws on marijuana. The laws were changed, and a decade later, that same newspaper publicly retracted their support when they saw the devastating impact on youth, on addiction, rising the cost on society, adult addiction as well, and they publicly said, we wish we had never supported this. Netherlands,
can I stop you there for 1 second on that idea?
Definitely.
Ashley.
Definitely.
Dr. Ashley. Now, he's talking about the addictions. What are the addictions to marijuana?
What exactly? I just repeat that question. You cut out that last part.
Okay. Addiction. What are the addictions to marijuana?
There is no chemical dependence that we've established with marijuana as far as actually people having a withdrawal syndrome. I mean, there have been reports of it, but it's illegal status makes it difficult to report and document the use from, absorption to, distribution, metabolism, excretion, the actual effects, and then also just the withdrawal of that. I'm not saying that there aren't withdrawals. There are. However, it's not as addictive as something like cocaine is, where it sticks in the body for a very long time. It sticks around for a very long time. As we all know, marijuana has a metabolite with a half-life somewhere around 30 days, depending on the frequency of the patient's use. That, going back to our argument about drug testing, really gives marijuana an unfortunate rap. Somebody can do cocaine all weekend and have a clean urine drug screen that Friday or somewhere around, meaning after a certain amount of days that drug will be cleared. You could drop acid all weekend and 2 weeks later have a clean urine drug screen. I doubt employers would want to be employing people who have weekend benders like that. So getting back to whether or not it's addictive, does it have, is there an actual chemical dependency? Sure, it's a chemical. However, it's a chemical that has two different receptors that we're born with to interact with that chemical. It is a plant, as we've discussed, and certainly you're going to see a rise of, addiction rates and cost to society, because once you've eliminated the stigma for folks to report their use, folks are going to start reporting their use, and you're kind of opening the gates, the floodgates of all of this data. Not to mention you've repressed and prohibited behavior of an entire population. You're going to see a huge tidal kind of balancing out. And it's going to take a couple years until people can actually, it's kind of like giving car keys to a 16-year-old. They're going to get into a couple car accidents the first couple years because they're instantly given this freedom, and that's why insurance rates are higher for people of that age group. Once you're somewhere around 35, they level out, and, you've become able to balance and cope with that power and responsibility of the freedom you're given, in this case, marijuana.
Okay, so now, and Will, now you spoke about these things and the cost of sorts, right? And you were talking about social costs, and this is what Ashley was just kind of touching on there, and it reminded me that you were talking. Now, you went to say that because marijuana legalization would increase use, and basically any tax revenue gained would quickly offset by the social costs.
Right,
Is that correct?
Definitely a distinct possibility. And if we look at the pattern of alcohol and tobacco, for every $1 that's brought in taxes, $10 is spent on other negative societal costs.
But what about the rest of the money coming in?
What do you mean the rest of the money?
Well, okay, like obviously with marijuana, you're going to have, police, and there's going to, just like alcohol is. The alcohol brings in revenue to the police. Alcohol brings in tons of tax revenue to schools and things of that nature. Right? I mean, so I don't understand how this... What?
Statistically, just speaking of the statistics, for every $1 brought in through taxes, $10 is spent in societal costs from the negative consequences.
But that's kind of a misleading quote, isn't it?
It's a statistic. I don't know how the statistic is misleading, but I mean that's just a reality. Say it's not free money. And then there's also the question of. There's another question. People say, well, we're going to pour this back to schools. I'm talking about the hard reality of what's happening. I'm talking about in theory of what, I've told reporters this all the time. In theory, the whole thing sounds nice, and if there's some utopia, we might be able to do it like this. But I'm talking about what we're actually going to face, just like when
Well, I know you're saying that it's a theory, sir. Hey, I know you're saying it's a theory. But Colorado's been proving. Colorado just brought in $17 million in taxes to the schools. I mean, it would have been nice a few years ago to say that this is a theory, but it's not. It's a reality now. You're seeing the marijuana proven work. Am I wrong by saying this?
Without a question, it has brought in some money in Colorado. That's not a question. But again, the question, I think Colorado's response to that is interesting. And the idea is you can bring in money from a lot of different things. You can legalize, cocaine. You can legalize a bunch of things. There's a lot of things that are not legal. There's a black market. There's tons of things that are not legal. The issue is not can you make money off of it, but what is the cost of making money off of this? And the responsible thing as lawmakers,
tell me, what's the cost?
Citizens, addictions. The studies that are out right now, and I know there's going to be immediate dispute of this, but the vast majority of medical organizations in the United States currently do not support legalization because of studies that show that marijuana can lead. This isn't every single person, but it can lead to schizophrenia. It can lead to drop in IQ, especially for younger users.
I missed that. Dropping what?
Up to an 8-point IQ loss, especially if you begin when you're a younger user. The American Psychological Association, which met here in D.C. For June of last year again, and they said that it has to be emphasized that even casual marijuana use can lead to, and this is quote, significant neurocognitive damage because it actually does change how your brain is formed, especially again in younger users. And so when you're looking at someone that may have a lifetime of negative mental issues because of the use of a drug, that's a pretty significant cost.
Well, here's it. And well, we were talking about that before you actually got in. Ashley had stated that. Go on and tell them again, if you could.
Yeah, I mean, I know that we're referring to, the schizophrenia argument where, basically marijuana was associated with an earlier onset of schizophrenia. If you look at those studies, and, if you have a pathophysiologic background, that's a big word, schizophrenia is a hereditary disease. It's passed on through genealogy. The use of marijuana is not going to insert a schizophrenic gene or a gene for schizophrenia in someone's DNA, and they're not going to express that phenotype. Does marijuana have the potential to turn on that gene of schizophrenia earlier than when it normally would have been turned on, or, turn it on when it otherwise would not have? We're not sure because we can't study it because it's illegal.
And and I'd say on that we have a terrible track record with marijuana. Again, I've not categorized marijuana. I've done evil, wicked plant. We need to be doing more research on it. The University of Mississippi is the only university that can study it right now. That's ridiculous. Let more people study it. Let's see, see what, put this under the light and see what it's doing. But why are we rushing forward with legalization, commercialization like we have in Colorado, Washington State, Oregon, when everyone admits the research is it's all over the place out there, and it's very limited as well. There's people that, some dispute, some of the findings by Lancet or the American Psychological Association or the American Medical Association, which all, can condemn it, and so there's dispute and debate out there. But I'm saying let's get more research on it. Let's put it out there. But this does not, more research does not mean marijuana store on the corner next to the liquor shop.
Well, Will, I know myself, I've been a heavy researcher, and I don't have any of those problems that you were speaking of. I am a marijuana smoker. I've smoked it. I am not addicted.
There was a great article that I just read about this. I think she was 99 years old, or actually 104 years old. She said the secret the secret to her long health was that she drank whiskey and smoked half a pack of cigarettes every day. It does not mean that everyone that smokes marijuana is going to have some negative side effects. Everyone that smokes tobacco, we all know someone that's old that smokes tobacco and they're perfectly fine. So this is an issue that everyone's going to go crazy or something because they've used marijuana. But I'm looking at this from the broad statistical perspective, not from
a
case-by-case basis.
They are broad. And that's what I'm kind of getting at, is what this kind of comes down to, is personal choice. And, no matter what you do, you're going to have issues with something. Something's going to cause issues. I know people that have issues with pop and caffeine.
Definitely.
So, I think it comes down to, the personal choice, and it comes down to being able to handle what you're doing more or less and understand it. Most people aren't going to smoke every day of their life. I know I haven't even smoked in like a year. Just because, frankly, I don't feel like it. Maybe next week I'll smoke one. Who knows? But probably not. I'm too busy. And that's where it comes down to, is making adult decisions. And with alcohol, they made the legal drinking age 21. Used to be 18, but then they felt 18-year-olds weren't responsible enough for that responsibility. So it's up to 21 now.
We also didn't have a war where we were, recruiting 18-year-olds against their will. So,
Well, there is that. There is that too. But I'm saying is that
about adults making responsible decisions, I've never once advocated again that people should go to jail. I've never,
No, you didn't.
Change how I haven't. I said the first thing I said was I do not think that people should go to jail for smoking a joint, and it's a false dichotomy to say that we have to legalize to lock people up. That was my opening statement.
Right.
And so I'm not trying to, again, mandate what someone does in the privacy of their home. But this is just a responsible social question. Are we going to allow, again, industry? This is what we're talking about. These are the analogies that we're making. These are the questions that we're posing to people as we go out in the community. Do you want to see a repeat, a tobacco 2.0, where there's documents from tobacco companies already that are ready to start marketing marijuana? There's, I think the tobacco company Brown Williamson said, we have the fields to grow it, the machines to roll it, and the marketing to produce it, and they're just waiting to jump on this. So we're not telling people to make a moral decision that this green plant is some evil wicked devil plant or whatever people call it. I'm just 25 myself. I don't have some ridiculous prejudice against it, but I am saying
have you smoked it?
No, I haven't. I tell people I don't like to play Russian roulette. Just statistically, you're younger, it's 1 in 6 chance that you're going to become addicted, statistically. So, you know, I don't want to play those odds.
Russian roulette's a little harsh. I mean, that's a harsh interpretation, don't you think?
Well, not in the sense that you're going to die, but I don't want to play Russian roulette in the sense that I could be addicted. I mean, someone in my family, one of my close friends that really used marijuana, completely derailed their educational career, their drive. One of my friends, actually a close relative, there's some mental issues that have arisen as well. So, you know, I said, you know, I don't want to take the chance. And statistics show that most people that start after the age of 25, and I'm just 25 this year, do not become addicted, do not become heavy users, and might actually be able to do what we could term, a responsible user. And we also have to realize that marijuana today has drastically changed over the past years because they're breeding the plants to have a higher and higher THC content, and actually less of the things that may be potentially beneficial, because again, from a money perspective, the high is what gets people coming back to you. So it's a lot more potent than it has been in the past, 20, 30 years or so. And so that's another thing to take into consideration. That
sure, but then you don't have to smoke as much.
Depending on why you're doing it, some people like to get high, and so if that's what you're looking for, you're going to do it more. Again, but we're telling people again, this is not about a moral thing that is some wicked plant. This is about, do we want to see what's it likely going to look like? How's it likely going to impact your community? How's it likely going to where the store is likely going to be given the track record that we have? We're not talking about we all wish it could be how it is. I've told you before over and over, the idea and how it's sold sounds like a great thing to do in utopia, but I'm just saying we all know that where we're living, and is this a wise decision? Is this what we want to be doing? And here in DC, we've got a 50%, almost 50%. We have the lowest high school graduation rate in the nation, and so we're saying, is this something we want to add to the equation right now? Maybe after we've up the graduation rates and things like that, then we can move on this. But there's so many other things that we could be getting motivated about, and even race. And I'm very annoyed, and it upsets me how kind of race has been taped onto this marijuana issue. We need to, but it's done a disservice to both debates. It's done a disservice to the marijuana because it's not being viewed as we're not debating it on its medicinal purposes. We're not looking at it from research. Rather than just it's really polarizing, but we're also not dealing with race. We're somehow saying, well, let's give a free pass to everyone that's been given these disproportionate arrests. Here in DC, it was 8-1 that if you're black, that you'd be arrested for marijuana use. That's ridiculous. But I'm saying, let's hold these people accountable. The answer isn't just, let's legalize. Hold people accountable instead of giving them a free pass for racial discrimination.
Here's I mean, we're talking about the racial end. Do you really think that the people who are going to be advertising and marketers are looking to just aim the industry at the minorities? I mean,
not on paper. No, not on paper. But this is it's like the lottery aim for.
I mean, if you should be aiming something. It's
an advertising method that works.
Yeah, but here's the problem: is that here's my problem with the idea of that is that. Yeah, okay, the marijuana advertisers are going to be there. They're going to market. They're going to market to white, black, brown. It don't matter.
Right.
What about? I mean, you see it in rap. Rap is just one big billboard nowadays. It's not even about music. They're talking about different strands of marijuana. They're talking about different drugs. Hey, do this, do that. You know what I'm saying? Like, shouldn't you aim that somewhere else versus just another business?
I mean, personally, again, I can't talk for other people, but I take a holistic approach to it. I'm saying, okay, like I'm not, giving a free pass and say, okay, let's rap about this, and then, on the other hand, let's not do it. I'm trying, whether it's specific, of course, I'm love my community. I'm at work in my community, but it's not just about our community. We have to look at the nation as a whole and what's going to be good for youth as a whole. And I mean, we also, there's a reality that certain drugs have a different impact on different communities. Alcohol devastated the Native American community in the United States in ways that it didn't do to others. Okay, we have to take all of these factors into consideration. I don't want to see us repeat the mistakes of the past that we did with tobacco or that we did with alcohol. And so I'm saying, let's put on the brakes. Let's not rush into legalization like we're trying to do across the nation. And learn from, those that don't learn from mistakes of the past or didn't repeat them. I don't want to see, again, third recreational drug repeating the things of the past. Let's put more research on this. Let's go about a more responsible route with it and more restrictions. Colorado, if we just look at Colorado, as the industry there has been totally irresponsible and fulfilled every prediction of an irresponsible industry that we've been warning people about. Their placement of the marijuana stores, there's Pop-Tarts instead of Pop-Tarts. They're specifically targeting youth. I could send pages of pictures of. You don't think
Pop-Tarts specifically get to the 21 and to 25-year-old?
they may get to the 21 or 25, but again, we're looking at who's the overall impact. And I'd be happy to send files of where the places that one place that recently got shut down had Elmo on the marijuana dispensary. So
come on now. That goes too far. No 6-year-old's going to give a shit about smoking marijuana.
No, but it's like I was just out in my community the other day at the playground playing with actually.
Do you know what Elmo markets to? A woman. Yeah. That would market to a single mother going out of her mind with a 4-year-old.
No, it's about, now, I did my major in communication. It's about building associations from the youth. And I was just at the ice cream truck just came through. I was with my your cousins the other day. And this girl had this candy, and I'm like, I thought it was a cigarette. And I was like, oh, it's like some sugar stick or something. But it looked like, a cigarette. And so it's not that the 6-year-old is going to start smoking a cigarette. It's getting comfortable and saying, oh, it's normal, it's part of life. And unfortunately in Colorado, that's how the industry has been going forward. If Colorado had kind of had a responsible way of launching this thing, we could have the debate a little differently. Say, hey, look at Colorado, look what they did. They had a responsible way. There weren't stores right next to schools. There wasn't all this advertising targeting youth. They weren't, but Colorado has been the Wild West of marijuana. And again, there's bipartisan condemnation of legalization in Colorado, as well as no longer a majority voter support for that. So that's also playing into the equation of the message that we're spreading.
Right. So
can I just ask? I'm just wondering why we're talking about recreational use, and we're comparing them to drugs like alcohol and cigarettes, which have restrictions that require photo IDs that are in date, that expire every 5 years.
Right.
Now we bring the recreational argument of marijuana, and all of a sudden we're talking about 6-year-olds. I just don't understand. I feel like a 6-year-old is way more likely to have access to marijuana while it's illegalized, while it's in the hands of the black market that do not operate with restrictions, as opposed to you come into a store, I don't care if it looks like Candyland. If there's a bouncer requiring ID at the door, your 6-year-old's not going to get it. By the way, where's the 6-year-old's parents? That's a whole other argument. That's all I wanted to. I guess I'm just confused with where we're going.
That's actually my favorite. What I view as a bad argument. And again, I'm young, so if I wanted to get cigarettes, alcohol, and I'm 18, 17, your friend gets the 6-pack and then shares it with you. It's not that you're going to make some fake ID. And I was more scared of some sketchy guy on the corner with something, say, do you want to buy this? And it's, I know my friend bought it in the store. I feel a lot more comfortable using it. It's like, I'll be 18, I'll be 21 next year, might as well. Whereas, when it's some guy on the street, there's a natural deterrent on the black market. There's a natural deterrent built into that. That's why there's 136 million people across the nation that use alcohol. There's 69 million people that use tobacco versus just about 19 people that use marijuana. There's a natural deterrent in having it on the black market. And again, I'm looking at this from a statistical perspective. What's going to happen when the industry comes in? We're going to see it rise to match the numbers of tobacco and alcohol, unfortunately.
Well, look, I mean, you're not going to stop teenagers. I don't care who you are. You're not going to stop a teenager.
We're talking about having the best impact on society. I'm not saying that we're going to control what everyone does, but I'm talking about the actual cold hard numbers. Which one is going to see, at the end of the day, more youth users? And we can look at other countries. We can look at the Netherlands too. And from 1986 to 1994, when they there was a 44% increase in youth use from 15% to 44%. And so youth use tripled there. That's just a reality of an industry. And again, I'm not putting a moral label on it. I'm just saying, hey, guys, do we want to see this happen? Everyone's going to make their own decision. Everyone should make their own decision, and we should, do the democratic process on it. But we want to get the other side out there and say, hey, look what happened in the Netherlands. Tripled youth use, 15%, 44% when it comes to the legal industry. That Budweiser, you saw them at the Super Bowl. We want to see that with marijuana.
There always could be. And you're always going to come to that point where you're going to have to deal with some kind of bad. No matter what the damn thing is that's out there, there's going to be bad and good with it. Marijuana, let's face the fact, it's not that terrible. It really isn't that bad. And marketing it, it's just marketing. Marijuana has always been marketed towards the funner, colorful, kiddie-like almost aspect. It always has. Look at Cheech and Chong. Look at right down the line. Go into a head shop. All it is colors and old cartoon characters and all these kinds of things. It's not that it's necessarily, I think, marketing towards children. It's marketing to high people. You know what I'm saying?
Can I ask a question real quick about what... Sorry. You guys keep going if you want. Well, we spent a lot of time referring to the industry, quote unquote, and I can assume we're talking about the advertising industry. I mean, what industry are we referring to with regards to marijuana? Because it's technically
he was referring to the market.
I mean, there's the cannabis business movement of folks preparing for a legalized status where they're kind of building the train tracks for the train that we hope will come. And then there's the medicalization, which really so much is an industry as anything else in healthcare is. So can we just come up with what, I would like Will to give me an idea of what he means when he says industry, besides the big bad people that are wrapping marijuana in candy wrappers.
It covers a host of things, whether it's corporations like tobacco companies. You want to see the quotes, I'll be happy to send them to you. From current tobacco companies that have already bought their names and different things in preparation. So there's that aspect of it. There is the so to speak mom and pop shop on the corner. There's that too. There are there's the aspect of just advertisers. There's the aspect of let's look at some Forbes magazines, Business Insiders that are talking about people getting ready to go on this. Let's talk about Jermaine Shively, former Microsoft executive, that said he wants to there's a quote, he wants to mint more millionaires. He wants to create the Starbucks of marijuana and mint more millionaires in Microsoft. That's another quote. So it's a lot of things that we're talking about.
But wouldn't you just call that good business?
Yeah, it is good business.
The business of America is business. That's the way we operate.
Yeah, and so
not always good.
There's nothing wrong with business. We're just asking people, do you want to see this business in your neighborhood? And in Colorado, at the latest election, newspapers aren't talking about it, but 80% of actual towns that voted on it voted against it. Denver still has it. Too much money's already invested there. So, once the corporation, we tell people, just look at the reality. Once the industry's in, the corporation's in, you're not going to be able to kick them out. That's just the way it is.
Right.
80%
I just don't honestly see the problem. I just don't.
Right, and that's the nature of the debate, and I can see how you wouldn't see a problem, but there's a lot of parents and a lot of people, in my community when we're giving this perspective, saying, we don't want to be in the camp with people saying it's some, devil plant, some moral issue with that. This is not about this. This is very practical, very hard, down to earth. What's it going to look like? Let's look at where it already came in. And so we're going to come down in different places on this, but this is a conversation that's not getting the airtime that legalization. Here's another thing. Legalization, the marijuana legalization narrative has been driven, if you look at graphs, it's directly correlated with hundreds of millions of dollars donated by George Soros, Peter Lewis, and John Sperling, and these three billionaires that have almost single-handedly changed the marijuana narrative in the United States, with hundreds of millions donated each year to organizations like the Drug Policy Alliance, the Marijuana Policy Project, and different things. People can use their money however they want, but we're also letting people know this has not been this is how it started. It is what it is, and people, billionaires can use their money how they want. And it's, again, that's not a moral thing either. We're just, telling people here's the reality of how we've got where we are today and what's driving where we are today. And here's another thing. In Oregon, Alaska, in Washington Oregon, Alaska, and Washington, D.C. over this past November 4th. $9 million was spent in legalization versus just $800,000 against it collectively in those places. So we're just telling people this is money talking. This is what's doing it. You can jump on if you want, and you can stay off the train if you want. We're just putting the facts before people letting them make their decisions.
All that number really states is just how wildly accepted marijuana is by people.
If these were grassroots, if they got their money through grassroots organizations, but if you get the money from a couple billionaires, not necessarily. So,
guys, I have to jump off the call. I didn't schedule more than an hour and a half.
Right. All right, Dan. Thank you, though. I appreciate you coming on and talking.
All right. Thank you. Have a good night. Thank you.
You too. Now, we are going to wrap this up soon. And I know you got on a little late, Will, and I get that. But you're trying to state, about that, and if it was a grassroots campaign, that would be fine. I mean, marijuana is always just, it's practically been a grassroots.
It is that's our biggest, one of our biggest weaknesses is folks call us unorganized.
Right.
And they call the marijuana movement unorganized because it is so grassroots, and we're unable to show up at, congressional hearings with suits and ties because that's not in our closets.
And like I said before, I mean, it's so wildly accepted, we have numerous movies about it. We hail and put in high regards to people like Cheech and Chong or Dave Chappelle in Hollywood. We hear about it on radio shows like this one. We hear... do you know what I'm saying, Will? Is that marijuana is, despite what all these guys are going to be doing is marketing their particular brands.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And honestly, knowing marijuana smokers and knowing myself, I say most people who smoke marijuana aren't going to go for the fucking Marlboro fucking marijuana. They're just not. They're going to go to a cafe because they don't want crappy weed. They want quality things that they know are going to be fine. Does that make sense to you?
Sounds like what, the early tobacco industry would say, what the early, alcohol industry would say. We've kind of heard the narrative before. Now, maybe by some miracle, it's going to all be different all of a sudden. But we're telling people, just put that in your calculations before we embrace the marijuana movement. Again, I'm not trying to get anyone to make some moral decisions about this. It's just let's just take a look. Let's look at the other side of this. Let's have a fair debate on all the issues around it. And again, people have the right to make their own decision. It doesn't make you a bad person because you said that you think it's going to be fine. And not trying to label anybody as bad. I'm just saying, this, from the way I see the figures and the statistics, it's not going to look that great for, at the end of the day.
I just really don't think it's going to change anything. The only thing that's going to really change about it when it legalizes, and notice I say when, is that it'll be in the open That's going to be the only difference, is that instead of not hearing about it because people don't want to talk about it because of jobs and whatnot, you're going to see it in the open. And then, of course, people, just like anything else, are going to go, oh, well, it's so much worse now because you hear about it. It's on the other, it's still there, no matter how you look.
The reporting.
Right.
Well, but wait, we just talked about business. We all agree in America, capitalism king. It's not just that. When you've got a corporation that's able to market, above ground, I tell people the most effective drug dealer is the guys in business suits. They make their living. They make billions off of doing that. So to say it's just going to stay
you're
the same,
damn right there.
Right. So I'm saying it's not actually just going to stay the same, but we're all going to see it. It's going to increase just from the fact of capitalism and smart guys in businesses, and more power to them. They're good at what they do. But we're telling people, hey, they're good at what they do. So do we want to see them get their hands on this as well?
Right. And you bring up some interesting points. You do. I'm not even going to lie to you there. I
really appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah, you make some interesting points when it comes to consumerism, for sure. I mean,
I agree with it. I think Will and I think very similar. I'd actually like to have some further conversations off air with Will. I really appreciate you coming on today.
Yeah. Yeah, but we are going to wrap it up because we've been going a long time, and I'm going to have a hell of an edit process.
I would just may I just end with just saying I want to thank Will so much because I think he really objectively kind of stated his point, respectfully, and I respect him coming on and kind of being in the hot seat. But, basically I think until this country decides what's more valuable, the bodies of their Americans who, work and pay taxes and keep our country strong, or the business bottom line, until we decide that, the sugar obesity problem, the insurance industry, alcohol and tobacco, that's going to be a very expensive and sad war to fight. Until that happens, until we decide, with regards to marijuana and legalization, don't hate the player, hate the game.
Very professional. No.
That's my professional opinion.
That's your professional opinion. Excellent.
That reflects my own and not Gonzo Today or any employers I'm affiliated with, just strictly my own as a professional pharmacist.
Excellent. All right. Well, I thank you again, Dr. Ashley Pincins and Will Jones. I do appreciate you coming in, though you were late. I do appreciate it. It's fine. It's fine. We'd love to have you back on the show too when the possibility arises for us. All right.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Talk to you all later.
Thank you all. Right, bye.
All right. Now we're off with Dan Linn, from the executive director of NORML, Will Jones III of TIEDC, and Ashley E. Pincins, Doctor of Pharmacy. We thank them all for being on the show. You're pretty quiet during that whole session, weren't you?
Yeah, I was listening. This is more your sort of thing than it is mine. I mean, I'm one of those people who, if it happens, that's fine. If it doesn't, it don't matter to me either way.
So next time I smoke, should I just start blowing the shit in your face?
You're gonna blow it
in a cage?
I'm gonna get a baseball bat and I'm gonna crack you over the head with it if you do that.
Well, what did you think about the interview, though? What's your feelings on the whole marketing to children thing?
I mean, to a point, it's correct. I mean, but that's marketing for you. They, start young, get them hooked young, and you have them hooked for life.
True, but not really.
No, I mean, not really, but the point is that marketing's going to do whatever they have to do to sell their product. So if that means targeting people at a lower income level, then that's what they're going to do. I mean, I think Will brought up some good points. I also think Will had some points that I didn't quite agree with.
I was hoping Dan was going to come out a little stronger, honestly. With the way, granted, now the whole interview kind of went a complete different direction.
Yeah.
Because everything with Will Jones, what he was saying, seemed like he was against marijuana. It wasn't even the fact that he was against marijuana. He was against the way the big business is going to market.
Well, not just the way that they're going to market it, but the way that they're going to basically it helps keep people down is sort of what I think he was trying to get at, in a sense that it's well, you already have these two things that are plaguing the areas that we need to work on in society. So you're going to add another thing in. How's that going to help? Is what his message felt like to me.
And my message was, how is it really going to fucking hurt?
Because I get that side too, because it's like, what worse can you do?
All right, Gonzos and Circus Freaks. I'm Kidman Williams here with Chris Labasco. Yeah, it was an interesting show, and I just really have one last thing to say about this whole thing after this.
Yeah, and one point I want to point to before you get to that, though, too, there was more than just that talked about in the interview, obviously, but those were kind of became the overlying theme, sort of.
It did. It did. That theme, big United States, big business, capitalism. That kind of became, capitalism really became the big subject.
Where the issues sort of lie.
Yeah, Will Jones came on, and he had a message to put across, and I think he put it across well. For once, our show didn't become a huge circus. Well, it almost did.
That's debatable, yeah.
It came close. All right. And now, my final thoughts on this whole thing. Yes, Chris, my final thoughts. Now, I don't care what people say. Marijuana is a drug. It is. It's a fact. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't matter if you say, well, it depends how you classify that. No. If you even have to think about it, it's a drug, people. It is. If you even have to think about it, it's a drug. Now, granted, marijuana, it's not crack, it's not heroin, it's not smack, it's not crank, it's not PCP, it's not some motion sickness pill in your mom's cabinets. It's not any of those things. It's marijuana. People who have smoked it understand. It doesn't hurt you. Some people get paranoid. You know what happens to people who get paranoid on it? They stop using it. Get it? And you always have that choice. And that's the beauty of America. America was always based upon choices. And at some point in this fucked up country, we stopped with that. People are now trying to take away everybody's freedom of choice. Now, I understand he's talking about how it, could be marketed towards children. Like I said, no 6-year-old's going to pick up a joint and start, you know what I'm saying there? As far as teenagers, I don't give a shit. They're going to do it. They're teenagers. They're always going to do it because they are teenagers. That's the time that they do it. They go in high school, or sometimes they wait till college and then all hell breaks loose then. But the fact is the fact. A lot of the population is changing their minds about marijuana. It's always been a very free-wheeled kind of a drug that everybody talked about because they knew it wasn't that harmful. So, fuck it. Let's smoke a joint, let's chill out, and not worry so much about how it's being marketed or how it could be this or how it could be that. We know the drug's okay. All right. That's about all I got about this. So, Circus Freaks and Gonzos, we're fucking out of here, man. We're out of here, Chris. Let's get the fuck out of here.